9:02. I'll give it 2 more minutes tomorrow and then we'll kick it off. We're ready? Oh, okay. Let's go ahead and kick it off then. All right, just for your understanding, for your edification, you know that we are streaming our Pierce County Community Engagement Task Force monthly meetings are being streamed live right now on Facebook. If you have a separate device, Jeff will go over later about your watch parties and all of that, but please feel free to share or invite others in so that they could join the conversation. And we're gonna kick this off. It is Wednesday morning. It is March 3rd, the first Wednesday in March. And we are the Pierce County Community Engagement Task Force, a representation of multiple bodies throughout Pierce County, serving in either the community engagement, diversity, equity, inclusion, and access spaces. There are leaders here. There are boots on the ground individuals here. There are consultants here. There are people here from all over that join our task force meeting monthly because why? We want to make a difference and we have work to do. And so my name is Shelly Willis. I am the Senior Director of Workforce Systems Alignment, and I am your master facilitator for this group. As we get started this morning, we want to make sure that we are, everyone is on mute if you're not. And I'm going to go ahead and tell you to go for it right after we do this. We're going to go ahead and go for it. If you haven't already, I want to emphasize the importance of you introducing yourself in the chat, because we utilize that information to capture data on attendance, who's here, who's reoccurring, and all of those things. So if you go ahead and start firing up the chat, we're doing the roll call in the chat, put your contact information in there, introduce yourself in the chat, and then we're going to get started. Thank you so much. All right, we want to acknowledge we want to make sure that we acknowledge everything. This month is Women's History Month. Yes, can I get a hand clap for Women's History Month? Just to give you a little history on it, Women's History Month began as a local celebration in Santa Rosa, California. The Education Task Force of the Sonoma County, California Commission on the Status of Women planned and executed a Women's History Week. We all know something always has to start off as a week or a day, and then we move forward, right? Celebration in 1978, and the organizers selected the week of March 8th to correspond with International Women's Day. The movement spread across the country as other communities initiated their own Women's History Week celebrations the following year. And in 1980, a consortium of women's groups and historians led by the National Women's History Project, now the National Women's History Alliance, successfully lobbied for national recognition. In February of 1980, President Jimmy Carter issued the first presidential proclamation declaring the week of March 8th. It soon became a yearly an annual thing too, where in 1987, when Congress passed Public Law 100-9, designating March as Women's History Month. And between 1988 and 1994, Congress passed additional resolutions requesting and authorizing the president to proclaim March of each year as Women's History Month. And since 1995, each president has issued an annual proclamation designating the month of March as Women's History Month. And President Biden just issued his national proclamation on March 1st. The theme each year is selected by the Women's History Alliance. And this year's theme, pushing forward in recognizing the challenges of COVID-19 in 2020, is Valiant Women of the Vote, refusing to be silent. We recognize the gender pay gaps. We recognize the different disparities and challenges that women have. And we also want to recognize all of the glass that has been shattered from all of the many, many firsts and great things that women have done. If you're a woman who has done a first, if you have been the first, understand that we recognize you and we thank you for being the first. And we also want to make sure that the shoulders that we stand on, we are honoring, and we are also continuing to pay it forward. So continue to lift women up, continue to be allies for one another, continue to champion without anyone being present, and let's continue to move forward. Thank you so much. Jeff?
Thank you, Shelly. Okay, so I'm going to do the land acknowledgement. Give me 2 seconds to pull it up here. Okay. We pay our respect to the elders, both past and present, who have stewarded this land throughout generations. We also express our respect for all other displaced Indigenous peoples who call Pierce County home. These are original homelands of the Nisqually, Puyallup, Squaxin, Steilacoom, and Muckleshoot. It is important to move beyond acknowledgement and reflect on your own history that brought you to this place. This land acknowledgement is one small step in an ongoing commitment to improve our support of Indigenous communities in this area. Thank you.
We've already started doing our roll call. Thank you all very much. And if you are connecting with me in the chat, I will follow up with you as soon as I can. So I'm going to turn it over to Tamar Jackson so he can talk about why we're here, what we're doing, and what's happening today.
Hey, thank you, Shelly, Jeff. What's going on, everybody? I just see all these beautiful faces just sitting there ready to go on the first of the month. I was listening to my Bone Thugs and Harmony because I take the task force meeting. That's the important day of the month for me. Oh, man. First and foremost, congratulations to every single woman that is on this call right now. Without you guys, honestly, there is no us. You guys are just a powerhouse over the years and decades. You guys have become powerhouses, and we will, as men, do whatever we need to do to support you guys because your work is just as important as ours. And, you know, making sure that we fight to make sure the equity stays where it needs to be. And you guys are all recognized as superstars and leaders. Man, Tamar Jackson, Director of Community Engagement for Workforce Central. I got so much energy right now, man, and I'm definitely excited about today. So for those that have not been to the task force was, honestly, it was the dream child of mine, and you guys have honestly just made it possible. We wanted to build a space for you guys to be able to feel that you are safe, to be able to collaborate, to be able to connect, to be able to network, give you guys something. As Shelly said before, in this space, we have from CEOs to on the ground to community members, and everybody's voice here is important. I always say we are the new Motown. We make hits after hits after hits, but we can't do it without each other. You know, we want to keep the focus of our community first. And if you're coming from another county, welcome. You know, we got to go all the way across Washington, go across the world, and pour into everything that we can pour into together. So this is just not Pierce County. This is the communities that we all serve, and we serve them together. We serve them pridefully every single day. It's not 9 to 5. We do this work 365 days a year because we believe in this work. We believe in the community, and we want to continue to uplift them. The one thing I will always say is we do not have the power to empower anybody, but collaboratively, we have the power to uplift everybody. With that being said, welcome to the first of the month. Welcome to the Pierce County Community Engagement Task Force. And if you are not a member, just so you know, go to the website. We have one, www.pccetf.org. Click that join button so you can make sure that you are on all the lists, all the mailing lists, know everything that's happening with this task force, and continue to do this work together. Because honestly, it makes you guys' work easier. I know it makes mine easier, just being able to be with you guys and reach out to everybody that I need. So I hope you guys enjoy today. It's going to be an amazing, amazing presentation. The Lens of Equity, Part 2. Let's make it happen.
All right, Jeff, you're going to talk to us about the Facebook page, group, watch parties, feedback, those type of things.
Absolutely. So we're doing all of our housekeeping up front today, so that way we can give as much time needed for the presentation and discussion to follow. So just so that everybody knows, there's a lot of new people on here. Please go like our Facebook page. We have a public facing one. We'll put the link in the chat. That is the one that invite all of your friends, invite anybody you know to that particular one. Once you become an active member, there is a private group that you can join as well. And that is where we do a lot of our announcements. We share resources, we ask questions, collaboration, all that sort of stuff is what the private group is used for. That's not one that we have anybody invite because it is private. So let me post that link here in the Facebook. If you are, let's see. Get it in there. There we go. If you would like to do a watch party to kind of help promote this, I know a couple of people asked how to do that. If you go to your Facebook account and where it says what's on your mind, if you click in there and scroll down, you'll see watch party. You click it and there's an option to select live when it gives you the menu. And then type in PCC, ETF, or task force. It should pop up, and then that's pretty much it. You can type in something, but basically it's just streaming live now on your account to everybody in your circle. So that part's fairly new for us. So we're just trying to get the promotion out there and have everybody kind of help get the word. The public-facing website is really just to help us build an audience, so people can see what's going on with without having to, commit yet. And then let's see what else is on the agenda. Feedback form. So that's new on our website. Please use it. If there's anything that you think that needs to be added to the meeting, or that something that needs to be altered or improved, please don't hesitate to use that. That goes directly to the leadership so we can see what's going on and we will adjust accordingly. Like I said, anything that needs to be added, changed, good feedback, bad feedback, whatever it is, please let us know. And then the request a meeting form. This is also new. I just wanted to let everybody know. So if somebody's asking to come to the meeting and you want to share, and you know who they are, they're a trusted colleague, feel free to share it. They just won't be put on our mailing list. So they'll get, the meeting, this first meeting, and then that's it. If they would like to be added to the mailing list, please use the forms on the website. That way we can capture their information, add them to the list, and then they'll get an invite ongoing. I know there's been a few questions about that as well. And I think that's all I got.
All right, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna get our updates, quick initiative updates, overview of progress from our subgroups. We have the People's Group, followed by the Outreach Group, followed by Organization Structure, and then our very own Sam Bradshaw will be giving you a Workforce Central update on our Workforce Central Business Solutions introduction to the work that we're doing for Business Solutions. So we're going to kick it off with the People's Group.
Good morning, everybody. For those who don't know me, I'm Amanda. I'm a co-leader for the People's Group. And right now we have our education pods, and it's basically where parents can get together and watch the kids together taking turns, and we'll put them through a certification so they can get their early childhood education. And so right now we are in the phase of trying to partner with local colleges and seeing kind of what we have to do to make sure that's funded. And we also have the Speakers Bureau going on, which is where people with lived experience can come in and share their stories to the community and to providers in order to kind of reintroduce the community to the community. So everybody is kind of on the same page and we can improve our programs and awareness. So right now we just finished putting our first speaker through the process, and he will be speaking at our next People's meeting. So we're super excited about that. And so the next People's Group meeting will be on the 18th at 11 a.m. So if you're interested in that, go ahead and head to the website and sign up for our meetings. And then Jeff, you want to go ahead and give us an update on I-5 Thrive?
Absolutely. And for those who don't know, Amanda also is a speaker, and this was kind of her baby, and she is speaking tonight at 6:30 for her first engagement. So that's pretty exciting too. So I-5 Thrive was kind of an idea on how do we get a bunch of partners together that are kind of either a training provider, an employer, or in workforce development, how do we get together and start to give the underserved population of young adults access to opportunities that they don't normally get? And that was the start of it, and it's evolved. We meet about every 2 weeks, and right now we are really trying to understand who's in our group, what strengths they bring, and we are starting to look for partners to bring into our meetings. So whether those are CTEs from school districts, whether those are organizations that offer different trainings, employers in our specific area right in Pierce County. But this is also a cross-county collaboration. So we have King, Snohomish, Pierce. We even have representatives from Spokane because they're doing amazing things. So we're in kind of the brainchild part of this, but we are starting to put together some pretty good momentum and booking out meetings for months to come that are bringing in different speakers or different partners. So if you would like to be a part of that, let me know. I can add you to the list and we can go from there.
All right, outreach.
Good morning, beautiful people. It's me, it's Courtney with the outreach group. Kelly is, I'm sure most of you know, she's not working at the moment, and we're keeping her in high spirits and definitely praying for her for a speedy recovery. So I'm stepping in to kind of just share with you that we have confirmed a date and a time for Collaboration for a Cause 3.0. We are working really, really hard to move this event and push this event forward. The event is going to be hosted on Saturday, April 3rd at Metro Parks Tacoma's Star Center. It will be from 12 p.m. to 3 p.m. And for those of you who don't know what Collaboration for a Cause is, it's a event where organizations are coming together to provide resources for the community. I mean, that's just the basics. A cross-sector, cross-county of collaborative efforts to bring much needed resources to a targeted audience. And our targeted audience this time is South Tacoma and the Lakewood area, that demographic. We served Hilltop and the New Tacoma, and we've also served the East Side. And now's our chance to serve South Tacoma. So we are working really, really hard, getting the logistics put together. There will be more details to follow. We are also looking for resources. So if you guys have any access to resources, we're looking for masks, we're looking for socks, we're looking for school supplies for these babies going back to school. We're looking for hand sanitizer. Whatever you think that the community is in dire need of right now, please feel free to reach out to myself, to Tim Jumper, to Kelly, to anyone that's actually in the outreach group to support our efforts. It's a collaborative effort. And we need all the support that we can get as our task force friends and members. So again, Saturday, April 3rd, 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. It is a drive-through resource fair at Metro Parks Tacoma Star Center. Please feel free to contact me if you have any questions. Tim, did I miss anything?
Oh. You rocked it, Courtney. That's everything. But like Jeff said, we've also got a lot of people who are, you know, on the outreach groups, you know, kind of membership roster, and we're like looking at them and getting to know everybody too, understanding their strengths and figuring out how to engage them in the work that we're doing as well. So I think you covered everything. Good job.
Thank you, outreach team. If you have not connected, if you want to be a part of that planning session, please reach out to Courtney nor Tim. Thank you so much. All right, our organizational structures group.
Hello, we are excited to be rounding out the final of our summit. So today you're going to hear about practice. Next month it'll be about policy, and the month after promotion. And all of that is a sneak peek into our summit in June. So the next thing we're working on is a summit, a lens of equity deep dive into how can you get your businesses moved forward. So if you'd like to be a part of that, we welcome you. The other thing we're working on is a starter kit. So we are planning to have a starter kit where businesses can take all these resources go into their business, and whether they're at the very beginning stages of their DEI journey or in the middle or even advanced, that there's something there for them. And so we're really excited to be doing that. If you want to be involved with that, we'd love to have you. Dr. Cindy Caldwell, myself, Tanisha, and Davita, and Sarah are all leaders on this group. So please reach out to one of us if you're interested.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. All right, Sam Bradshaw, Workforce Central Business Solutions introduction.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is Samuel Bradshaw. I'm a part of the Business Solutions team here at Workforce Central under Teresa Delcino. Looking around, I know most of you, and I've worked with a whole lot of you here before, so I'm very, very excited to be kind of introducing our team here and just let you know that we are here for you. Essentially, our team is tasked with being the bridge between the employers of Pierce County and the job seekers, right? And ensuring that kind of stability is there and those connections are there. We're out there every day working with businesses of all sizes, really boots to the ground right now. We're a small team, but we're working really hard here in Pierce County. Would love to share one win with you that we've had here recently. We've been working with Olympus Services, which is a small family-owned, minority-owned business right here in Pierce County. We were able to work with them to get a few hires made early, one of which was a site manager. So they're a construction and decking company. We got them a site manager handle, so they've been able to essentially double their production. So really, really exciting stuff we're doing out there. And again, we're working with everybody from smaller organizations all the way up to the largest companies in Pierce County. So really just boots to the ground and out here working, and couldn't be more excited to be a part of this. Like Tamar said, really just happy to be a part of the new Motown right here, right? We're really making hits and we're really making an impact. So happy to be here, happy to deliver. If you need to contact our team, it's businesssolutions@workforce-central.com. I'm Sam Bradshaw. Again, super happy to see y'all.
Thank you, Sam, and thank you for that quick introduction. He put his information in the chat. If not, Sam, he can plug it again so that everyone can capture it. And thank you also, Courtney, for sharing the resources that are needed. So make sure you're checking out the chat. The chat is hot. There's a lot of information being shared. All right, now we're about to transition over to part 2 of our Lens of Equity mini-series. As Carissa stated earlier, this month is about practice. It's practice. So I'm gonna turn it over to the amazing Michael Jordan. No pressure, Michael, no pressure at all. I'm gonna turn it over to the amazing Michael Jordan, and he will facilitate this portion of the Lens of Equity mini-series. Michael, it's yours.
Good morning, everyone. How's it going? My name is Michael Jordan. I'm a dad, a consultant, and a photographer in the area, and I joined in with the Pierce County Community Engagement Task Force way back in August, and it's been a great ride since. I appreciate the work that's happening. This, like Shelly said, this is the Lens of Equity mini-series. You can think of it as 4 trailers preceding the upcoming Epic in June. Last month, we went over the people version of this, going over the importance of organizational culture with the people in the center. This month, we will be talking about practice, which is where the policies and different things are acted out by businesses, and we have some amazing people presenting. Next month, we'll go over policy, in the following month, promotion, and then in June, we'll pull it all together in the summit. You can see last month's presentation if you go to the website. The link should be there, right, Jeff? And next, we're just going to introduce the people that will be presenting, next, we're going to talk about organizational structures. As Carissa said, we work on some of the processes and different things that are happening within the whole group and how to address those issues. Some of our past projects include housing resources, including a lexicon, resource educational guide, and organizational assessment. And of course, this 4-part equity mini-series. And we're coming up in June is the summit, and then creating the gold standard onboarding process where businesses have something where they can bring people in that is in a manner that's equitable. The presenters today are 4 dynamic people, and we'll start with Lori Harnick from Goodwill, and she is going to cover some amazing things. One of the things we wanted to highlight is part of the DEI lexicon is we've added A, which stands for access. A quick fact, there was a, highlighting the importance of access. Between 1931 and 1962, the New Deal gave out $120 billion in home loans and business loans. 98% of that $120 billion went to white families. The inflation impact of that $120 billion today is $2,150,949,618,320.61. That shows that even when there are good things happening, if there's no access for everyone, it's still not equitable. And with that, we'll move on and let Lori take over.
Okay, well, thank you, Michael. And hello, everybody. I'm Lori Harnick. I lead our Goodwill based here in Tacoma, and I'm really delighted to be with all of you. And I'm delighted to kick this off for our group. So the first slide that we're sharing is the continuum on becoming an anti-racist multicultural organization. And we want to start with this because it's really important wherever you are in your organization to understand that there is a continuum, and you may be at one point, another person in your organization may be at another point, but it's important to think about how to progress and to recognize that it's not something that is static, right? It's not something where you can say, I am or I am not an anti-racist organization. For the most of us, we are working on becoming an anti-racist multicultural organization because it takes real commitment, it takes real action. And I find that this continuum is extremely helpful in understanding all the different aspects of what an organization must do if they want to truly become anti-racist and multicultural. I want to give credit to the folks who put this together. You can see their credits on the bottom from Crossroads Ministry in Chicago, but this has been something that has been developed with a number of groups' input, and something that our organization at Goodwill is using as our overall guide, our overall map toward how we are going to progress and where we are now and where we need to be. So I encourage you to look at this. It will be also available on the resource page afterward to help your organization have conversation about where you are and where you want to go and what you need to do to get there. So that's just an overview to kick off the things that we're going to talk about today. The next slide breaks that down a little bit further. So we talked in our group, we talked about the fact that we believe there are really 4 key pillars to becoming an anti-racist multicultural organization. Those 4 pillars are what we're going to discuss. I'm going to talk about leadership and operations, and others are going to talk about data culture. The 4 key pillars really begin with leadership. Leadership has to be on board and has to visibly lead the work. I'm sorry, can you go back one more slide? I want to just, thank you. So leadership really must be on board from the very beginning and visibly lead that work. That is perhaps easier said than done, depending on where you are in your organization. But I want to say that not only official leadership, but there's unofficial leadership in every organization. Each one of you are leaders in your own way. And so really think about how you can use your leadership position and how you can encourage others. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a few moments. The second area is data. So as we all know, especially for a business, data is critical to demonstrating the need for any kind of change. So if you're looking to activate change in your organization of any kind, you need to think about what data you're going to bring forward as evidence. This is not easy to do, and sometimes we think, well, does it always have to be data? Can't it be qualitative? And of course, there's a role for qualitative evidence, and storytelling is critical. But data is also very critical in making the case. Thirdly, it's not just enough to say something or to give evidence to something. You've got to put an operational plan in place that's going to put your commitments into action. Change will not happen unless you have a plan to make it so. And then lastly, and this goes back to what was discussed last session by the people group, it's about culture. So all of this is fine and dandy, but if you don't have the culture, you don't have it. So culture is key. It has to match the operations of the organizations day in and day out. So saying one thing and doing another will not work. So culture is key. And we're going to talk about each one of these over the course of the next couple minutes. So let's go to the next slide. So leadership. This is an author, Charlene Wheelis, and she talks about 6 steps that leaders can take to become anti-racist. Now, it's maybe too simple to say there are only 6 steps, but I thought for this conversation, it is somewhat helpful to kind of boil it down. And the very first one is to take a stand. To take a stand as an anti-racist. This is absolutely critical for leaders to do if their organization is going to change. And taking a stand has to be obvious, verbal, communicated. You know, if you are silent, you have taken a stand in a different direction. So recognize that it has to be heard. It has to be communicated. And this is internally, of course, but also externally. The communication needs to be genuine, right? It needs to come from a real place of true compassion and true care. And so if you're thinking about your organization and how to move it along the continuum to becoming anti-racist and multicultural, how can you demonstrate your care, your compassion? How can you help facilitate, encourage that with others? And if you're a quote unquote official leader of your organization, how do you make sure that you're really engaging from a place of compassion? Understanding the BIPOC lived experience. This, of course, for someone like myself who is white, it is something that I need to do through education. I need to do this by my own learning, my own journey. Of course, if you have the opportunity to learn from others, that's so critical as well. But this takes time. And so these 6 steps are not something that happen, quickly. If you're going to really truly lead in a very authentic way, then you've got to take the time for each one of these steps. And understanding the lived experience of people who are Black, Indigenous, or other people of color is absolutely critical to moving forward as yourself and as a team and as your organization. At that point, it's really about, okay, I've done some learning. I recognize I'm coming from a place of compassion. I'm taking a stand, but what can I do about it? So as a leader can direct its organization to truly get down and examine and address the systemic racism that happens in that organization. That is a very comprehensive, integrated approach that you've got to really think through. Where is the root? How do we need to change it? What are the sacrifices that we need to make? What are the things we need to give up? What are the compromises we need to make? What are the changes we need to make? So this is not about, just a quick review of how you're doing. This is very deep, and this takes a lot of time. And I can talk more about that in the operations section. The 5th step is embracing allyship, right? So what can you do with others, whether it's in your organization or outside your organization, to join with others, to support others, to learn from others, especially with our community, Pierce County community. We are such a collaborative group of people who love to help each other, and there's so much opportunity for allyship, and I see it every day, and I'm really inspired by it, and I just hope it continues. And then number 6, okay, you are a leader. You are, whether you are an official leader or a non-official leader, you have clout. You can change social norms in your own circles, in your organization, and the people you engage with, both through work and outside of work. You have the opportunity, you have the platform, you must use it. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Nora Fleming, because Nora is going to talk about the second pillar, which is data. So yes, leadership on board is critical. That's number 1. Data to make your case. If you are in a position where you're trying to make the case for change to your leadership and to others, data is critical. So over to Nora Fleming to talk about that.
Hi, everyone. Yes, it is absolutely critical. Can you hear me okay? Okay, great. It is absolutely critical that you have data, and regardless of your position in the organization, you're always doing some kind of managing up. So if you are the CEO of an organization, you're managing up to the board to really try to get the board on board with any change that you want to make. If you are a department leader, you're working in 2 directions. You want to make sure that the folks that you're working with in your department see the need for change, and you're also making sure that C-suite folks are open for change. And one way that I've found to be really beneficial in talking to both of these and working in both of these directions is sharing numbers, spreadsheets, and the bottom line. It's a very clear way that can indicate the real impact that ignoring workplace equity has on an organization. And so we can see some quick facts here. We know already that workplace turnover is a real issue. It affects the bottom line. 2 million professionals leave their workplace annually due to unfairness, due to a hostile workplace. And that really is part of that culture piece that we've talked about in the previous sessions. According to the survey that we reference here, people of color are 3 times more likely to have left their jobs due solely to workplace unfairness and hostility. And it can really have a negative impact on an organization's employment brand, which means word gets out in the community, especially in a community as small as Tacoma and Pierce County. People know where are the great places to work and where are the places that can be sort of problematic. The rapid turnover costs companies $64 billion annually in direct costs, such as the hours needed to rehire, training for new people, the loss of connections when people leave, diminished reputation as an employer and subsequently as a company with which to do business. It has a very real impact, and this can help persuade board members, executive level people to really get on board with DEAI efforts. Again, lawsuits brought against organizations due to discrimination have an average direct cost of $75,000 to $125,000. And I would say if an organization has had a discrimination lawsuit, it's probably a lot more than that eventually. And finally, the last piece that I think is really critical, especially for nonprofits, is what grant funders are looking for, and not just grant funders, but also if you're receiving funding from cities, other organizations, from foundations, they're really increasingly looking toward a commitment to DEAI initiatives in mission. Are you illustrating that your mission is committed to DEAI? And priorities, do you have some strategic priorities that you're actually acting on? That's that operational aspect of things. And the implementation of those practices. It's a fundamental aspect of funding criteria at this point. So, taking a funding application to the board or to your executive folks and showing them that, hey, you know what, we're going to miss out on this excellent funding opportunity if we don't, get our ducks in a row, could really help spur action. So in short, data is important, but of course, facts and figures, as we all know, are not the reason for implementing DEAI pillars into an organization's operations. If you are experiencing resistance at the board or the executive leadership levels, they can help make a convincing case. And I'm going to shoot it back to Lori now, and she's going to finish up and talk a little bit more for us about how we can put it into practice.
Thank you, Nora. And yes, so as we talked about, the pillar of leadership, data to make your case, leadership to take a stand, and data to make your case, how does that all come together? It's about putting it into an operational plan. And so, the thing about if you're truly going to become anti-racist and multicultural, this is not a program, this is not an initiative, this is not sort of a thing you do from time to time. This is foundational to your organization. So just as other aspects of what you do are foundational, it must be integrated into a full-on plan that encompasses every part of your organization. That sounds perhaps overwhelming, but it's the only way to really make it real. And so how to go about this? Like, I'm sort of into this STEP program just so that we can, kind of break this down. I think it's helpful to think about. It's a large piece of work to get your head around, but wherever you are in the organization, there are some key steps that can be taken to help you move along that continuum. First of all, again, no matter where you are, educate and learn. So educate yourself, learn, provide opportunity for learning with others. That's absolutely so critical. You cannot do this work until you've done your own work. And so starting with education and learning is where it begins. As you think about your organization, think about how to align with the core values and strategic plan of your organization. So as I said, this is not about an initiative that stands over to the side. It is something that must be integrated and critical to the core value of what your organization is doing, what its purpose is. Obtaining the CEO or the ED buy-in. So again, maybe this starts with the CEO and the ED leading it, but if it doesn't and you're in a different part of the organization, how do you get their buy-in? That is some of the things that Nora talked about is one way. It's not the only way, but certainly very helpful. That's critical. Obtaining buy-in from your board of directors. This is certainly more easy to be done if the CEO and the ED are on board, but if your CEO and ED are not on board, make the case to your board of directors. That's the governance body, and they need to know that this is critically important to the employees of the organization. They need to hear that. If they're not hearing it from official leadership, they need to hear it from others. So obtaining CEO buy-in, ED buy-in, board of directors buy-in. As you're doing the work, whether you are alone or you're with a team of people who want to advance this work in your organization, think about organizing some sort of employee advisory council, equity team. It can be called a number of different things. The point of it is to make sure that you have an avenue for employees to share their ideas, their thoughts, their perspectives, their experiences, and their case for change. This is critical to any leadership team that's trying to drive change. They must make sure that they're hearing from people across the organization. Launching to the organization. So this is not something that should be done silently or quietly. This is about making something a declarative statement and putting a commitment out there and making this quote unquote official, because if not, again, it should not be a sideshow. It must be on the main stage. As you decide that you've got the buy-in, that you're going to do something, that you're committed, where do you start? Where do you begin? Conducting an assessment to identify the core needs or core areas of change is absolutely important. Frankly, at our Goodwill right now, we are in the midst of that assessment. So we've done a lot of the statements, the commitments, the policy changes, with the advisory group. We're doing a lot of what's on that left column. And we have a strategic plan, a map, I should say, for where we're going to go and the changes we're going to make. But one of the most important things on that map is a thorough organizational assessment, because frankly, there are 100 things that we need to do. which one do we do first? Which one do we do second? Having this organizational assessment to help guide and prioritize is really, really helpful. And we're in the midst of it right now. As you do that, you will learn, you will identify benchmarks and goals. Okay, this is like anything else you do in your organization. You need goals, you need benchmarks. How are you going to get there? Where are you going? Why are you going there? Create that operational plan. And then as you're doing this work, share it with others. Help other people outside the organization learn from you, learn from them, share what you're doing, ask what they're doing, have that back and forth conversation so that you can continue to evolve, continue to develop your plan, and as you put it into action. And of course, with anything else, you want to make sure you're measuring it and adjusting it as you go, because what you design in month 1 may need to look different in month 3, 6, or 12. So measure it, adjust it as you go. Don't be afraid to recognize that, okay, maybe we weren't quite where we needed to be. We need to evolve it. That's fine. It's learning. It's about working the plan and continuing to make the progress. And and the final, of course, is that continue that educate and learn. So this is one big loop. You just keep going around the loop. You continue that education and learning. You continue to make sure that it is aligned with your core values and your plan. You make sure you truly have buy-in along the way from all the people you need. You keep learning from and hearing from employees. You keep assessing. You keep working it and adjusting it. And you will make your path. You will make your way along that continuum. So it's a lot to take on, but it can be done. And I have a lot of confidence that I know many organizations in our community are somewhere on this continuum and are doing this work, which is fantastic. The fourth area, the fourth pillar that we're going to talk about today is culture, because all of this potentially could be for naught if the culture does not match what you say you're going to do. If the experience of employees or others in your community who access your organization is not a match for everything you say and try to do, and the culture is not there, this will fall flat. And so this is so critical. Shonda Chapman is going to talk with us about culture. So over to Shonda.
Thank you, Lori. So speaking of culture, as an organization, I have some key questions for you. Are you interrupting white standards and dominant culture? Are you playing into the bait and switch practices? Are your organization's DEAI efforts just checking the box? Is your organization's dominant culture eating your strategy? And so I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in depth. The bait and switch is a logical fallacy that occurs when someone presents a partial appealing truth while hiding an unappealing falsehood. And that happens a lot, as Lori said, when you're presenting what you're about and what your mission is in this work, but your culture does not portray that. One example that I have, my wheelhouse is higher ed. And in higher ed, it is common to have a high percentage of BIPOC employees working on the front line. We call that division normally student services. And student services' primary job is to establish relationship with the end user, the client, those that we want to see in the organization, to build trust, to onboard, to engage that new enrollee. And once the student buys in, becomes a student, a part of the culture, and experiences daily practices, if you have not addressed anti-racism in your culture, what will happen is that those dominant culture norms and those racist norms will be exposed. And that's when the bait and switch has occurred. What the student signed up for, or the end user in any organization, may not be what they're experiencing in the organization, and it will become a problem. Are your organization's DEAI efforts just checking the box, going through the motions, behaving unintentionally, and carrying out actions without passion and purpose? So the examples that I have for you is it's important for your organization's anti-racist efforts to persist beyond agendas, anti-other statements with very little follow-through or no action at all, and committees that have limited voice and no power at the decision-making table. It is important that organizations also acknowledge how white standards and norms are showing up and affecting daily practice. If that is not addressed, then it's naturally embedded. It'll just continue to perpetrate itself without ever being addressed, and it's causing harm. And finally, is your organization's dominant culture eating your strategy? The culture of a company always determines success regardless of how effective your strategy may be. What is happening in the core day-to-day practices, no matter what you say, that is the culture. What the lived experiences of your employees, of your staff, of the end users are, that is your culture. And if it doesn't align with your mission and vision of your organization, it's harmful. And that's when, when in my case, in higher ed, you will start to see low retention rates, lack of completion rates, because people have bought in, came into the organization, they start experiencing things in the day-to-day culture, and they just make a decision like, there's a struggle to connect. That relational capital has been violated in some way. They start to question, is this really the place for me? Am I valued here? And so are you spending more time within your organization comforting resistant, defensive people instead of actually examining how racism is showing up and being practiced and affecting your culture? That is when culture is actually eating your strategy. And those are the things that you really want to pay attention to. So this slide, I'm going to let it populate. I just want to give you a visual, since, as I've already shared, that my wheelhouse is higher ed. I'm going to share some numbers with you concerning just the four colleges within the community and technical college system in Pierce County. And so here, this is a pretty basic breakdown that provides a visual of the employee structure, which gives context to BIPOC representation in the community college and the decision-making table. Next slide, please. So here is some data that shows and compares classified staff numbers, which is pretty much your front line within the higher ed system, versus our student population demographics. Here you see that we're comparing the student population to BIPOC frontline classified staff groups, and the employee group that has the highest BIPOC representation actually has the lowest position of power. So kind of giving a visual where most of the BIPOC representation, where those relationships are built, are the ones that oftentimes aren't, at the decision-making table. Next slide, please. So here you'll see our overall percentages for BIPOC representation within faculty for Pierce County. Thank you. And so this is a breakdown of BIPOC representation for administrative staff, which also includes exempt staff, versus the classified staff. You still see that there's a higher number of classified staff. So BIPOC representation at the administrative level is 192 out of 913 employees. So when you think about that as far as representation, you know, in voice to culture change in this work. And we have a lot to work on. So the slide supports that frontline staff of color still outnumber administrators of color across 4 schools and 8 campuses. How often do you think that BIPOC classified group are invited to the decision-making table, the ones that are really building the relationship and engaging with your students, the clientele, the end user? If invited to the table, do they really have a voice at the table and are truly a part of the decision-making process? That's something that I really want you to think about. So finally, the BIPOC population lacks representation within positions of power. The solution, those in positions of power, board members, hiring managers, administrators, directors, must put the BIPOC population they serve at the forefront. And 3 ways that we can be accountable to that is to combat the bait and switch. Allow your DEI efforts, the DEAI effort should be evident in your daily operations and in every process and layer of your organization. We have to move past just checking the box. Economic empowerment is key. Your DEAI budget should align with your core values and strategic plan. And welcome and embrace culture change. Discomfort is the root of all growth and learning. Please don't fall into the trap of spending valuable time comforting those that are defensive and resistant to anti-racist work. It won't get you to your mission. We need to spend time really addressing these behaviors within our culture. And I'm going to turn it over to Cindy now. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Cindy Caldwell, and I'm going to be talking about assessments. So there are many different versions out there, and I know that the policy group is going to be talking about policy assessments next month, but assessments are something that's going to give you data, something to create a foundation that you can build on, which Lori and Nora have already emphasized. So organizations want to know that they can measure, which is what Shonda was just mentioning as well. So improvement, decreased turnover cost, improved job satisfaction, productivity, etc. And if the true result is that we want to create pro-equity, anti-racist, anti-sexist, anti-homophobic people, we need to have data to build on that as well. So you should all be familiar with this assessment. It's the one that Organizational Structure was put together last year. It's in the welcome packet, it's on the Facebook page and the web page. And it's a great starting point, especially if you're doing this work in-house without a consultant or just beginning your DEAI journey. This is Lawrence Garrett's assessment tool, and in it he asks questions about race and gender, demographics and the organization and staff and leadership, as well as regarding promotion, salary, and discrimination complaints. For example, in staff, how many and what kind of affinity groups? Do you have any DEI, do they have any DEI training? Are there problem staff members? Does the organization only honor Christian holidays? Are there floating holidays? Leadership, do they have any DEAI training? Are they leading any DEAI trainings? How about implicit bias? Do they belong to any of the affinity groups? Lori talked earlier about leadership taking a strong role in DEAI training. Is there commitment? And then goals. Where do you want to be in a year? What numbers should you be seeing? And what changes will you have made? These are all questions to get you started on a strategic plan that you can really have to follow. So we talk a lot about being anti-racist. And Ibram Kendi, in his book, How to Be an Anti-Racist, says we are either racist or anti-racist. He makes it very binary. And this is true for every demographic. When we other someone, we are setting them apart. We are making them less than. And the difference in being racist or anti-racist is action. The only way to become anti-othering is to take action. So if we group anti-othering as the umbrella over all of these other things that we want to be, then we have the anti-othering concept. To break it down further, You are either sexist or anti-sexist. What action are you taking to become anti-sexist? Are you making sure that women's voices are heard? Are you making sure that you're not interrupting them or talking over them? Lifting them up one time does not, that's checking a box. So what are you doing on a continuous basis? What action are you taking to become anti-homophobic? Are you making sure that there are not microaggressions towards your queer people in your organization? Kendi goes on to say that if you think you're anti-racist, but you're still homophobic, you aren't anti-racist for the simple reason there are queer, Black, Indigenous people of color. If you think you're anti-racist, but you're not looking at your own sexist bias, you're not anti-racist because there are women of color being discriminated against. And the inverse of these is true as well. And this is hard work. It takes courage and persistence. It takes a willingness to make mistakes and try again. And you know, I just heard how many mistakes you're going to hear in this presentation today, but we are going to keep trying and improving because it's such important work. So this is the Intercultural Development Inventory, and it's the premier cross-culturally valid assessment for building cultural competence in your school or organization. We also call it the IDI. And it's basically about assessing your cultural competence. It's a personal and an organizational assessment because after all, for things to improve, we have to improve as individuals, which then of course is reflected in our organizations. And of course, as Shonda mentioned, and Lori, organizations have their own culture. So how well do you move from your own cultural bubble and into someone else's? Does the culture of your organization play well with other organizations, the city, etc.? Note the levels on the journey to becoming culturally competent: denial, polarization, minimization, acceptance, and adaptation. But really, what is culture? So the term intersectionality was coined by Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw to highlight the challenges of racism and sexism that women of color face. It has since been used to explain our sense of personal culture. So personal culture is about your intersections, your places of oppression where they intersect. So, but also your influences, your beliefs, your gender identity, where you grew up. Did you have two parents? Did you have a single parent? Did you have same-sex parents? Cultural competence is valuing differences. Just like what makes you anti-racist is action, what makes you culturally competent is valuing the differences, not making someone less than or othering them, but valuing them. You're learning from those differences and you're being able to not give offense when you're moving within their culture and back into your own. It does not mean that you agree with everything in another culture. It means you value the differences. So let's talk briefly about the different orientations of the IDI, which kind of outlines the cultural lens that we use to see the world. So this is Mike Pence leading the Republican caucus on women's health. So they are denying that women need to be in the room. Emmanuel Acho said the acronym of denial is "don't even know I'm lying." They don't even recognize that it's a lie that women's voices need to be heard. So dominance and fear lead the stage of denial, and it is a monocultural mindset, not needing to see anyone's culture but one's own. Polarization. So this is Leisha Evans, a nurse from Baton Rouge, speaking truth to power here, right? Polarization is power over. It's us versus them. I'm right and you're wrong. Polarization can also have a reverse orientation where a person doesn't value or understand their own culture. One example of this is a person from another country really wanting to fit in. She may try to hide her cultural differences so that she doesn't stand out. Polarization is also a monocultural mindset. Minimization is the bridge between the cultural mindsets of denial and polarization and the multicultural mindsets of acceptance and adaptation. Minimization is starting to wake up and to see some injustices, but mostly just wants to get along. So this may be the peacemaker in your family or your organization, but they're not quite yet looking for justice. They're not yet willing to be uncomfortable, and they're not yet looking deeply at their own bias. But minimization is the bridge we all have to cross to get to the next orientation. So Dr. Angela Davis turned the Serenity Prayer into a social justice statement. Acceptance is recognition and appreciation of cultural differences and values, but the person in acceptance may still be hesitant or even get stuck in knowing the right thing to do. And know that none of us get into one of these orientations and just stay there. We're not set in concrete. We're continuing to learn and educate ourselves and to do better, to practice. So this is more of moving like a pendulum as we become aware of new concepts and work to move through these different mindsets to value difference. We're gonna, if we are exposed to something brand new, let's say the first time you were ever learned about someone who was transgender, you might have said, oh, that's just not a thing. And so that's denial. Well, since then, you've had education and exposure and maybe even friends who are transgender. And so you've moved up that continuum until you're up into acceptance of, yes, they have value. I appreciate them. They're part of my culture now. So adaptation. So the story goes that a woman was living in China. She had a friend come to visit her, and they noticed in the morning that many elderly people were in the park doing Tai Chi. And the friend asked the woman, well, why is it only elderly people who were doing Tai Chi? And she said, I don't know, but I'll find out. But she did not interrupt the Tai Chi practice. She went to the back of the group and did Tai Chi with them. She waited until they were done, complete. And then she went up to a gentleman and asked, why only elderly people? And he said, well, all the young people are at work. But what adaptation does is it doesn't make it about you. She went to the back of the group. She joined in the Tai Chi practice. So she did not interrupt. She did not make her need more important than their need. So adaptation is the effective use of empathy, or being able to shift your frame of reference to understand and be understood across cultural boundaries. Again, it's the ability to shift your frame of reference to become competent, to not give offense, to value another person's culture. It is to use empathy when navigating cultural differences. So the IDI is a practical tool to start an individual and an organization on their journey to becoming culturally competent. It gives a baseline for both the individual and the organization to start from, giving specific information on what the growing edges are. So these are a few examples of organizational assessments and what can be done with them. And I would just like to thank this team for their time, their commitment, and their expertise in this presentation. Elise Bodell and Abby Clark were also part of our team early on and added a lot of really great ideas, but life just got too crazy for them with work and school, and they couldn't continue with our meetings. But they were an integral part of our team, and everybody has just been a joy and an inspiration to work with. And also a huge thanks to Juliana for creating many of the graphics and creating our resource page here, which will also be on the website. And Jeff also for his willingness to just support us in any way we could. This presentation was a lot of work, but the relationships we have built are just invaluable. And next month, it will be policy, talking about assessments with policy as well, and other fabulous ideas.
Thank you to Cindy for keeping us organized and moving forward.
All right. Oh my goodness, Michael.
Yep.
We have some questions. What's our next steps?
Next steps are, let's see.
Breakout rooms?
Breakout room, yes. And there's a list of questions that everyone will go over. I think, first I want to say, I want to be like Miss or Mrs. Chapman when I grow up, because she had some amazing questions and I was just like, wow. And everybody else, amazing job, amazing presentation, amazing content. I have some more learning and research to do. I think Jeff will get everything together and send people to the different rooms, all led by different people. Do you mind if I share the questions now that we're going to ask, or do we want to wait for them? Okay. So the first question is, what obstacles have you encountered in getting leadership on board, and how did you overcome them? Question 2 is, how has data helped make a DEI AI case, and what else have you used to get everyone on board? Question 3, are your DEI efforts rendering the cultural experience and practice that you intended? And then the fourth question is, how do you see assessments being used to further your DEAI goals in your organization? So that's kind of a primer. They'll ask those same questions. Everybody that's leading should have a list as well. And once you guys get to the rooms, we'll start talking.
Perfect. Thank you, Michael. So we're going to jump in. 10:35 is when we'll come back.
And some of our friends are going to join us in the lobby. I'm going to stay with Tamara and I in the lobby, and we're going to have a good, crucial conversation around our Lens of Equity series and work in the role that workforce development is playing in this change through the task force. So we'll see you all soon, and the rest of us will hang out here in the lobby. Thanks.
Man, that was fire. That was some fire. I don't even know what to say. That was deep in some fire.
It was. I'm watching it. I've been going back and forth because I'm watching the watch party. I'm watching the watch party, and I'm looking here, and this is really, really good. Oh goodness, I'm excited about our little conversation that we get to have, and that way our folks that are watching us live as we stream on Facebook won't be looking at a blank screen, and they'll get to be a part of the conversation. So we have a couple of folks that are still on here. Who's joining us in the lobby today? Hey, Elvin.
Hey,
Rachel.
So we got it's gonna be a great conversation this morning. First and foremost, Shelly, I don't know if you recognize the panel, but this was the National Knob panel.
Yes.
We coming home with this one. And, Rashana Ware is going to be coming in and she's going to be representing with us. And I'm excited for this conversation, man. I know, because of COVID, we didn't get to go to DC and do what we do. But, it feels good to be on the platform with you guys, man. I'm definitely excited to just have some great conversation with y'all.
All right. We got a couple of folks coming in and out. So I don't know, Jeff, if you're putting them in a room. We have Greg, Angel, and then we have someone who just joined us.
Ty's going to be on here with us. He's representing Snow. Yep, he's going to be here with us.
Oh, Ty. All right. And then we have, I think, Sinyoon. And so whoever's going to go, we want to make sure in order for you to be seen on the Facebook live stream, we have to see you physically on your picture. You have to be live in order for you to show up on the Facebook live stream. If not, you're just hanging out, and we'll go from there. All right. We have Equus Tacoma. I don't know who this is. So got a couple of folks. All right, Tamar. All right. So welcome to the lobby. Welcome to the lobby. What I want to do is I just want to take time out to just recognize all of the wonderful, great minds that are hanging out with us to have this conversation. All of you are amazing. And then as I connect and I watch your lives unfold on Facebook, whatever you desire to share, I'm seeing so many great and wonderful things. I'm just saying I'm gonna need an autograph. I'm just throwing that out in the atmosphere, but I'm not gonna name any names just yet. I'm gonna need an autograph. But let's do some introductions. Let's go around, do some introductions. I'll start with Tim Jumper, and then just jump in and introduce yourself. And then tomorrow we'll start the conversation.
Let's do it.
Hey, good morning, Shelly. So this is Tim Jumper. I am the Community Engagement Manager at Sound Outreach, also lead for some of the DEI work that we're doing there at Sound Outreach, and also a co-lead on the outreach group, part of our Pierce County Community Engagement Task Force team. Good morning, everybody.
Hi, I'm Rayshana Ware. I work for the City of Tacoma as an engineering technician in science and engineering and environmental services. I also work part-time for Bates as an aerospace program navigator. Happy to be here. Thank you.
I'm Rachel Pease, a diversity and inclusion manager here at Cosmo Construction.
Delvin Buku, graduate Tacoma, Foundation for Tacoma Students. I'm the deputy director there. Shelly, it's always warm when you welcome us in, so I appreciate that this morning.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. And then we have Jeff Wolf trying to work. I know he's working.
Hi, everybody. Glad to be here. Jeff Wolf, Community Engagement Coordinator at Workforce Central, co-lead of the task force, and local business owner. And yes, I am working behind the scenes trying to get everybody.
And then we have Tamar.
Hey, Tamar Jackson, Director of Community Engagement for Workforce Central, leader of the task force, co-lead of the task force, half lead. Man, this ain't even me no more. This is you guys now. And definitely an owner as well. So glad to be here with this just powerful voices, and so excited to just have a great conversation today.
All right, so let's get into it. Let's get into it. We are hanging out in the lobby so that our friends who can't join us in those rooms and have great conversation answering those questions, just addressing this whole lens of equity mini-series. But I want to throw something out to the group. I would like to know, when you think about the reason or the why for the task force, you've been with us for pretty much the entire ride. Most of you have been on this journey with us since the inception, when we used to meet in person. That was a thing. And we were able to actually do some whiteboarding and all that stuff. But when you think about the role that the Pierce County Community Engagement Task Force plays, and you think about workforce development in our system, what are your thoughts about how this has really galvanized the voices in our community, public, private sector, or otherwise? What are your thoughts? Anybody can jump in.
I'm happy to start. I know there's going to be a lot of thoughts here, but like from the jump, it's always been for me about relationships, right? And Tamar, you were the driver of that from like our first conversation kind of thing. So who's doing the work, but like position, job title, organization, that shouldn't matter, right? Like what are the lenses and lived experiences that we're bringing to the table? But then how do we leverage my job or my organization or whatever to actually make something happen, right? So relationships always has been number one. And what I'm seeing in the evolution of this, and I represent like one sector, right? Let's say education. What I represent, or what I'm seeing, is like a framework by which we can come together to actually make something happen with things like we heard just today, like data, right? How are we combining our data sources so we know exactly what's happening? How are we aligning resources? So those three things: data, resources, combined with the relationship. Now something different can potentially happen, right? And it's not the same old, same old. So that's what I'm seeing in the evolution of this group, is like a little bit more structure and framework around that.
All right, anybody jump in?
Yeah, I agree, Elvin. A lot of it is, like I said, just such a natural extension of the work that we're doing at Sound Outreach. You know, we as an organization adopted an integrated service delivery model where we're talking about things like, you know, financial stability and economic mobility. And this team really helps us to kind of build capacity to work more effectively with other organizations, improve the effectiveness of how we collaborate and serve clients. So like I said, you know, like the workshop that we saw today is really about, you know, things like sharing learnings, best practices, you know, really leveraging our strengths, creating those relationships that Elvin was talking about, you know, kind of working on joint projects together. And like I said, Tamar created a space where there's no egos there, you know, it's an environment where we all win, you know, and 9 times out of 10, that, you know, is directly impacts the clients that we're serving too. So the whole organization just gives me a ton of energy, keeps me excited, you know, and it's just a journey where we're continuing to learn and like I said, you know, just learn how to be more effective and, you know, let the client be that end user that's benefiting.
Shelley, can I step in and answer?
Jump in. Yes.
So one thing that I value most about the Pierce County Community Engagement Task Force is it's a place where you can come in and align and you can get common language, right? So when you all changed the lexicon from DEI work and then you added in access, right now our community is saying access, access, access. And if there is a need that needs to be shifted, this is a platform where people can come to get informed and updated and stay relevant, and we can shift as a community, right? So access is now a word that the community is holding because this task force has come together to agree that we need to include that. And if something else changes, we can make a quick pivot because of this group. So I see this as a way to align and to get common language and common direction. And then this provides an opportunity for quick shifts, right? So one organization is doing something amazing and brings it to this task force. And now all of us are made aware of it. And if we see something valuable that we could do to incorporate some of these things, right? Like we're all moving in the same direction together, which if we're in our silos rarely happens. We're all doing different individual work, but not knowing how to align that work. So I think this is an opportunity to get common language and to figure out ways to move forward and to shift and be more nimble as we do this work.
Like that. Rachel, that's real good.
Yeah, I think everybody pretty much said everything I'm thinking, but you know, for me, I think the relationship, like Elvin said, is a huge thing. And then also just a resource. You know, there's a lot that's going on in our community, and there's a lot that, you know, I in construction wouldn't know a lot of this stuff, right? So building those relationships, hearing what's going on in the community, learning how to, you know, get involved in different things that are happening, and being around like-minded people that are doing the same kind of work, but leaving our organizations at home and coming as individuals to just move forward this work.
Tamar, you have anything else to add to that?
Oh yeah, you know, I think from the jump, it really took all of us to believe in each other, you know, and the egos weren't anything. I think, you know, when we really started this, it was your title means nothing. You as a person means everything to what we do in this group. You know, it's building that table. And when we all started this, we wanted to build that round table. We wanted that space where everyone's voice could be heard. But if anyone was to ever walk in the room, you didn't know who was leading. And if one, excuse me, if one person went down, everyone else was there to pick them back up again. You know, if you had to fall out for a little while because life happens, guess what? We're there when you come back. This is that open door policy. If you have to step away, step away. You will always be welcomed when you come back here. And I think that that's a big thing that everyone does love, is that they can always come back. Like Roshana said, they can always be engaged. They can always be informed, and everyone gets the win. It doesn't matter what's happening. When you're all a part of this work, we all get the win because the community gets the win.
Yeah, and I can hear and see all of that. Jeff, I know you're working, but did you have any input you wanted to add?
Yeah, I'll just add on to what Tamara was saying. I think the personal and professional growth that happens from the relationships is something that we don't really talk about a whole lot. It's a byproduct of everybody trying to move forward as one. And I think, you know, now that we're almost in our third year, you're really starting to see that. I know personally that's something that I have benefited from. Just all of the relationships that I've gained by being a part of this. I know that I can call on anyone and ask them something that can either help me or help me do my job better. So I think that's a big part of it too.
Yeah, and when Roshana mentioned the silos, so much of our work that we do in this kind of, you know, service-oriented type space that we all live in, whether it's, you know, it's social service, but it's some type of service delivery model of some sort, serving some specific demographic. And we're siloed off because we think that, you know, our programs, what we do is the only source and the only way. And we're playing off of whatever dollars we receive. Programmatic dollars are, you know, hinged on the effort of the governmental funding that came down, and you have to meet these requirements, and you have to treat customers or your community like beans that you're counting. I remember when I first came in and I facilitated that second, I think it was your second meeting, Tamara, and we talked about the difference between, you know, identifying where we can collaborate, identifying where we can leverage, and how we can see the commonalities in what we do and remove the silos. It takes a lot of work because people, one, have to know that if I'm allowed to invest my time, that this isn't going to take away from my organization. So is there anything that you could share, you could tell us that the task force has allowed you to take back to your organization and talk to your leadership to really think differently about what's happening and how you can be more collaborative and how you can leverage the great resources that are coming out of the task force?
I'll go ahead and go first. Surprisingly, normally I don't say anything, but I'll say for me, definitely Tamar's been a huge, had made a huge impact on my personal and professional life. But, you know, I've really wanted to shift our diversity program from the small business side of it to do the actual real DEI work. And so I've made partnerships and relationships from the task force. Lawrence is now a full-time consultant for us. He's doing workshops and doing one-on-one coaching. And so I will say that has been like the most amazing thing ever, that I've been able to take a construction company and now we're doing DEI work, which you don't hear about that. So for me, that's like made a huge impact. personally and professionally.
Great.
I would say for me, representing the city of Tacoma, we came to the task force asking for the task force almost permission to use their platform to engage with a larger section of external partners to help us identify where we needed to do some improvements on our citywide internship program. And we had a lot of respondents talk about the need to see leadership invested in it. And from that, we were able to have sponsors in the room, our executive leadership in the room, answering questions that were asked directly from community leaders. Now, if this platform did not exist, that community engagement would have been severely hindered. And so the Pierce County Community Engagement Task Force allowed us to gather input that we were able to share with our executive leader, the city manager. And it just provided a way for us to get information and to receive information. And it made it a meaningful a collaboration. So I think this task force is doing some incredible work that our city is even being able to access and utilize and growing from. So yeah.
Thank you. Anybody else? Elvin?
Yeah, I'll go. So yeah, Rachel, I'll bounce off of that. Like personally, right? Like this is family now, right? Like that. Everybody who does the work, there's always some kind of family concept that brews naturally, right? We're not forcing that, but it's when you get like minds together, you just start to rap, and then good things happen, right? From a personal end, the professional end, it's like a breeding ground for ideas, right? And tomorrow, I think one of our first conversations I still remember is like, I don't know what we're going to do, but we're going to do something, right? Like something is brewing. And I think when you let things sit and you start to get to know people, you get to know the organizational strengths and whatnot, things will pop up organically. We don't need to force that. And I feel personally, from my perspective, a lot of the things that the Foundation for Tacoma Students is doing in tandem and direct partnership with Workforce Central in helping define, the goal is to get our kids into a good wage job, period. Like economic mobility, that's the whole thing. For education, education isn't just for education, right? It's to like sustain your life kind of thing. So I think one thing that I want to call out moving forward, right? The next phases is we're trying to get to systems change. We're trying to get to transforming the way that our systems talk to each other. Take more than this. Our small foundation and Workforce Central, right? Like that's going to take cross-sector, cross-community stuff. And so these ideas are percolating, but I think, I want to combine like the relationships, the data, and the resources. If those three things are present, then we can do some systemic change. If one thing is missing, it won't happen, right? Like if you don't have the data, we're just having fun, having good conversations. If you don't have relationship, but you have the data, I don't trust your data, right? Like I don't know you, who are you, right? And then sure, you have those two things. If we don't have resources, if we don't have money or time or any of these kind of things to actually make that stuff happen, nothing happens, right? So there's like, that's what I see this group. It has all three elements, right? So there's something that can happen moving forward long-term potentially to change the way that our system from like birth to career, you know, like something could shift here. And that's really exciting.
Excellent. Tim?
No, I just like to second what Elvin said. I mean, that's so important, you know, resources, data, and relationships. I just wrote that down because it just really brings everything to a head. We've always been doing really similar work, and this group just kind of helps us to streamline our focus, you know, even if it's about, you know, passing off that, you know, make like we talk about throwing an assist to somebody else, you know, if that's their area of expertise, you know, we could focus on what we do best, you know what I mean? And, you know, kind of really, you know, narrow our focus on how we can best serve clients and build, you know, build relationships, build capacity, and all those kinds of things like that. So I just like, you know, like I said, I second what Elvin said about just kind of opening up that space for, you know, more ideas, more growth, more learning.
I think that's really important. And Marcy is on here. I don't know if she was planning on speaking, but, you know, can you talk to us a little bit about how being a part of the Pierce County Community Engagement Task Force has impacted you, your work, your insight?
You bet. I have construction in the background, sorry. And I have my camera off because I see a couple of my colleagues didn't want to be like over health department, you know, represent us, Leah and Greg.
Oh no, we want voice. We want to hear you. Get on the camera.
Exactly what Elvin said. That's why I turned on my camera. It's like, yes, like all of those pieces, like relationships, data, and resources. I mean, from the health department, you know, we're always kind of like the data geeks, and we want to center everything on data, but it doesn't matter if you don't have those, you know, relationships in place, you know, and, you know, the resources to make it happen. So I just thought that was, I did the same thing as Tim, I wrote it down. So really on point. And I think, you know, for us, I mean, we all, you know, there's Greg and Leah here too. We all get something a little bit different, but certainly the relationships, just meeting new people. I mean, I'm somebody that's been a part of a lot of coalitions for, you know, probably 20 years, but there was like a whole new group of people within the task force that I didn't have connections with. And so to me, that's really exciting. That just shows that, you know, there's another level of reaching and you know, circles, you know, everybody has a different circle. And so that's been, you know, really helpful for me. And then Tamar has been wonderful supporting our work in communities of focus, which is just one of our equity strategies that's neighborhood based. And, you know, we had kind of been getting to the point of talking about how could we take some of these things into, you know, some other communities in terms of, you know, whether it's outreach activities and, you know, hands-on stuff. And then, you know, with COVID, we've all been a little bit busy with vaccine clinics. Lee and Greg and I are in the thick of that, but I'm really hoping to get back to that at some point where we can, you know, as we look toward recovery, we can be building in more strategies in communities, you know, across Pierce County in terms of, you know, what does economic recovery look like? What does, you know, housing resources, and, you know, just kind of reconnecting with people, kind of moving toward recovery. So that's one of the hopes that I have for, you know, as we kind of move along and get a lot of people vaccinated. So just some thoughts off the cuff. So
that's excellent. I know we're going to have folks popping back in here because we had a 5-minute warning. We're probably more like at 2 minutes now, but did want to open it up. Greg, Leah, do you have anything you want to add? Just want to give you voice.
Sure, I'll just share a couple of thoughts that I just had just now. I really appreciate this group. I've gotten a chance to know Tamar over the last couple of years. And my takeaway from this is, you know, having an opportunity to drop in, and I haven't been able to attend as often as I want to, or even be present, if you will, as much as I'd like to, but this group has been very inspirational for me. And that's what I end up taking back to the health department. Health department is trying to move in a much more community-oriented fashion. But there are tests for us. I mean, Marcy talked about vaccines, and they just opened up eligibility for vaccines to, you know, another group of people. And that for me is really the test in collaborating, because, you know, whether you can get on the computer and make an appointment, there are a lot of folks that are not computer literate. There are a lot of people in communities of color that are having a really tough time. There are other people that are not having such a tough time. So this whole vaccine drama is really highlighting how difficult collaboration is when there's something big at risk. And that's a real test for all of us. I've had the fortune of working with a bunch of people on vaccines that have nothing to do with public health. I mean, they're gathering friends and families and relatives of people, putting lists together of people that are interested in vaccines, and working in this crazy thing that Leah, Marcy, and I are involved in right now, trying to just get things organized, and then something changes right away. So this is a difficult time for me, at least, because collaboration is really being tested,
Thank you. Thank you. Leah, did you have anything you wanted to add before we bring the group back together?
I think Greg said it best. I'll just echo Marcy and Greg's sentiments, and I'm tired.
Well,
I didn't put my eyebrows on today.
Yeah, it's a good tired though, but it's exhausting. I mean, it's freaking exhausting.
Oh my goodness. Well, thank you all for hanging out in the lobby with us. Thank you for sharing the information and your thoughts on the impact that the Pierce County Community Engagement Task Force has had on you, your organization, and how you really are invested in being a part of this collaborative body of great thinkers and galvanizers. So we appreciate you as much as you really appreciated being a part. Well, welcome back, everybody. I hope that everyone had an opportunity to engage in your small groups and have some great discussion in that space. Really quick, do any of the leaders of those small groups want to just talk about topics or any overarching things that came out of those discussions, out of the 4 breakout groups or the breakout groups that we had? If you want to pop on real quick and just mention some things that came out.
I'll share a little bit. Our breakout group talked a lot about what they're doing in their organizations. We were able to hear how the importance of organizations being intentional, consistent about this work, not checking the box, not one person, literally their company was tokenizing them in a way that like, you should be grateful that we're handing this demographic to you. And he's just like, what about the dominant demographic where all the, money's at? I want to, I need to have access to them too. And so it was a great conversation. One person shared how their organization, middle management, has joined together in this work and is having weekly meetings, readings. Everyone's coming to the table. Everyone is addressing how they can be anti-racist in their organization. And that was refreshing to hear, because a lot of times with the conversations being uncomfortable, the resistance, it ends up being one conversation and it never reappears, or it takes a really long time to come back to the table. So to hear that they're consistent and leading from the middle, it was great to hear.
Good. Anybody else want to report out for their group? Thank you, Dan. Thank you.
Sure. My group was really interesting to talk with. We kind of went on a couple of tangents. One was talking about affinity groups and how needed white affinity groups are, so that white people will feel comfortable asking questions and calling each other out and doing some education. And thank you, Marcy Boulay, for starting a white affinity group that I'm a part of that has been really profound. And then we also talked about when organizations have boards of directors and they're wanting to have BIPOC individuals, that if you're just picking a BIPOC person because of their color of their skin and you don't know what they think and what their interests are and their values, then you're doing yourself and certainly them a disservice, and how important it is to do some research and find out to make sure that they're interested in what your board does and that they will actually be able to have an effect on future things that the board will be doing. So that was really interesting.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. Anyone else want to share out from their group?
I'm happy to oh, go ahead, Michael.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, we had a great conversation in our group. Some off of if we are sitting on organizations or on boards and they're utilizing us for our titles or to illustrate some type of position of power, then using our position of power to either step off and say, I can't support this organization, or speak up and say, we won't move forward until this is important and this is a priority. DEAI needs to stop being at the last agenda item. So how do we push it to be the top agenda item and a no matter what before we move forward? And so also utilizing or doing this work is exhausting, and it takes our buckets being filled. And so like we've seen in the chat, even knowing who your resources are that can help fill your bucket and just pour into you. Tamar says it all the time, how do we pour into each other? So finding that recharging station so that we can all be better in this work.
Thank you. All right, I think it's Michael. Thank you, Carissa.
Yes, I got to be in Lori's group, and we talked about a lot of good things. People shared where their organizations were at. Some of them were in progress, some were in the beginning, some had organizational practices being put in place. One of the things that someone brought up was that the organizational level, things are happening, but maybe not so much at the personal level. And Lori pointed out that the personal level is crucial because that's where the actual traction is going to happen. also they spoke about having fortitude and continuing with the work, and how it really affects everything. There's no area or industry that's not affected by this challenge. And that's my notes. And Lori said she has a little bit she can share too.
Well, thanks, Michael. Yeah, I think that covered a lot of the great conversation. Another part of the conversation was on data and how, while data is very important, the qualitative, the storytelling, the lived experiences is equally important, if not more important. And to really keep that in mind, to think about as you're building your case, it's not just about the numbers, it's about people's experiences. And in fact, that's the most important part of what you need as an organization to learn and to share and to consider as you try to drive your case for change. And then the other, the conversation started to, because we were talking about organizations are moving in a certain direction, but how do they measure it? How do they know whether they're getting something's actually happening? And the discussion then went into the conversation around, say, a particular industry. What are they doing to put things into place, put the commitment into action? For example, in banking, as one example, in banking, is there sort of some kind of banking redlining going on because of banking customers being evaluated based on their zip code and where they live? That also had thinking about it from a utility perspective. So we've gone into the conversation. It's really not just about the commitment or the leadership statements. It's how are you putting that into your actual practice of your organization? And banking was one of those sectors that we talked about. And thanks for the great conversation in the group.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, before we wrap, I just want to ask, is there anyone else before I turn it over to Jeff and Tamar, and then I'll close it out? This has been great, great, great discussion. And here we go. All right, so Jeff.
I don't have a whole lot to add. I just want to say congratulations, great job to the practice team. Really great information. I know there was a ton of work put into this, and I couldn't be happier. I think you guys nailed it. I think breaking down a lot of the examples and giving relevant information on what that looks like in organizations, I thought was really key. Just fantastic job. And we'll be adding the resources to the website. Yeah.
All right, thank you. Jeff also put in the chat, could the practice team stay on as soon as we wrap so that we could talk to you about your presentation and everything like that? But it's all good stuff, all good stuff. Tamar, any closing remarks?
I know everybody on this call, we got a lot of connections. I need somebody to get a hold of Netflix for me because we need to make our own series because we fire. So I'm gonna work with the presidents of Netflix so we can get our own stuff going. But going off of the conversation that Lori and Michael and them were having, I'm glad that it was brought up and how different sectors are still doing certain things. A lot of those sectors, it does start with HR. HR has become the new redlining. And when I say that, they're able to pick what they want and they build the structures around that to make them still feel comfortable. So when we are having these conversations with our leaderships, with our organizations, we always want to make sure that HR is involved in that conversation because we all can't transcend at all until everyone is ready to transition. And they're a big part of what that transition looks like if we're talking about making sure that our organization is equitable across the board. Outside of that, man, you guys did an amazing job. My heart's just filled right now. And I'm so happy that all of us are doing this work together. Again, all of our voices make this possible. It ain't about the title. It's about the passion. It's about the love that you guys bring every single month, every group meeting that we have. So let's continue to change the world and continue to pour into each other every single day.
All right. Thank you so much. I want to leave you with a question, and especially coming off of today's presentation. Many of us on this task force, in this meeting, in this space, we don't sit at the table when the strategic plan is being written, when it's being drafted. We're not a part of the conversation. Sometimes we're not even asked, depending on where we sit in our organizations, we're not asked for input in And now what we know for sure is that DEA and I definitely, all of it should be a part of and built into our strategic plans. How are you going to take that approach in making sure that your voice is heard? Leaders on here, how are you going to now be involve your staff, your team members in creating the strategic plan to make sure that DEAI is throughout all of it and it's not a secondary or final thought? If it's time for your strategic planning cycle review, within that planning cycle, if it's time for your review, maybe this is the time for you to revisit and see, do your objectives and priorities have those inclusive measures in them, and how are you going to prove or show that you actually were able to achieve those things with all of the things that we've discussed to be included. So think about that. What does the table look like when you're doing your strategic planning? Is it inclusive, and are you reaching out from the top to the bottom, your executive board, all the way down to the person that answers the phones and checks emails for you, takes in the mail? Everybody's voice should be a part of the organization's strategic plan, action plan, forecasting, all of that, including more deeper environmental scans. So as you walk away from this month's presentation, I kind of want you to think about that. Is there room to ask to be a part of it? Is there room for voice so that we can really evolve what our strategic planning looks like as organizations, and making sure that we're including all of the pieces and the parts that we never thought about, really had, we really never really actually put into those plans. So I thank you for joining us. Again, we look forward to seeing you next month when we have another presentation, another great presentation. And we want you to do nothing else but to be safe, stay healthy, and most importantly, be kind. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you next week. Leaders, practice teams, stay on the call.